I woke up to the sound of silence, which is never a good sign in Montana during February, and immediately knew the power was out again because my alarm clock was dead and the electric heater had stopped humming. My name is Peterson, and I live in what used to be a quiet town called Meadowbrook, population 3,000, nestled in the valley about 40 miles south of Missoula. I moved here 5 years ago specifically because it was quiet, affordable, and had a strong sense of community. That was before the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association got taken over by a woman named Patricia Hendricks, who made it her personal mission to make everyone's life miserable in the name of property values. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 6:30 in the morning. The battery was at 15%, which meant I needed to get the generator going soon. I threw on my thermal pants and jacket, grabbed my boots, and headed outside into the freezing morning air. The temperature had dropped to about 10 degrees overnight, and my breath came out in thick clouds as I walked around to the side of my house where I kept my generator trailer parked. Except it was not there. I stood there for a full minute, convinced I was somehow looking in the wrong spot. But no, the tire marks in the frozen dirt were clear as day. Someone had towed my trailer. My $8,000 industrial generator trailer that I had specifically purchased and set up to not just power my house during outages, but also to run the emergency water pump for the town's main well. Let me explain that part because it is kind of important. Meadowbrook sits in a valley with a quirky water system. The main well that supplies water to about 60% of the town, including the north side where most people live, requires an electric pump to push water up from the aquifer. When the power goes out, which happens frequently because we are in rural Montana and winter storms knock out lines constantly, the pump stops working. The town installed a backup system about 3 years ago, but it required a generator to run, and the town council, being perpetually broke, decided to contract with private citizens who had generators to provide backup power on a rotating basis. I volunteered because I already had a decent portable generator for my welding business, and the town paid me a small stipend each month to keep it ready and to hook it up during outages. Last year, I upgraded to a serious trailer-mounted diesel generator that could run for days on a single tank. The town engineer, a guy named Marcus Webb, had even run a dedicated line from my property to the pump station a quarter-mile away. During outages, I would wheel the generator to a specific spot on my property, connect it to the underground line, and boom, the north side had water. But now my generator was gone. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus immediately, not even caring that it was not even 7 in the morning yet. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Aaron, what is going on?" "Someone towed my generator trailer, the one that runs the water pump." There was a pause, then I heard rustling like he was sitting up fast. "What? When?" "I do not know. Sometime last night. I just came outside and it is gone. The power has been out since around 4 this morning. That means the pump has not been running for over 2 hours. People are going to start noticing soon." "I know. I am going to figure out who took it. Can you call around and see if any towing companies picked it up?" Yeah, on it. Call me back when you know something." I hung up and immediately dialed the non-emergency line for the Meadowbrook Sheriff's Department. The dispatcher, a woman named Sandy who I knew from the hardware store, answered promptly. "Sandy, it is Aaron Peterson. Someone towed my generator trailer from my property last night." "Did you call it in as stolen?" "I am calling it in right now. But this is urgent. That generator powers the town's water pump during outages, and the power has been out since 4 this morning." I heard her typing. "Okay, let me get a deputy out there." "In the meantime, Do you have any idea who might have taken it? I have one guess, I said, feeling anger start to bubble up in my chest. The HOA has been on my case about that trailer for months, said it was an eyesore and violated some code they made up. Patricia Hendricks. That would be my first stop. All right, sit tight. Deputy Morrison will be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and immediately started walking toward Patricia's house, which was unfortunately only 3 streets over. My neighborhood, Meadowbrook Heights, was a subdivision of about 200 homes that had been built in the early 2000s. When I bought my house, there was an HOA, but it was pretty relaxed. They cared about major stuff like people not painting their houses neon pink or leaving broken cars on the lawn, but otherwise stayed out of your business. Then, Patricia took over as president 3 years ago, and everything changed. Suddenly there were rules about what color your mailbox could be, how tall your grass was allowed to get, what kind of decorations you could put up, and where you could park vehicles. She had successfully fined dozens of homeowners for trivial violations, and she seemed to take particular pleasure in targeting people who pushed back. I had pushed back. Hard. She had first complained about my generator trailer 8 months ago, saying it violated a clause about commercial vehicles not being allowed on residential properties. I pointed out that it was not a commercial vehicle. It was a portable generator that provided emergency services to the town. She did not care. She sent me violation notices. I ignored them. She threatened fines. I told her to take me to court. She sent more letters. I sent them back unopened. Apparently, she had decided to take matters into her own hands. I reached her house, a perfectly manicured 2-story colonial with shutters that were probably measured to ensure they were exactly symmetrical. Her white SUV was in the driveway. I walked up and pounded on the door. It took about 30 seconds before the door opened. Patricia stood there in a bathrobe, her blonde hair in curlers, looking annoyed. "Aaron, it is 6:45 in the morning. What do you want? Where is my generator?" She blinked at me innocently. "I have no idea what you are talking about. My generator trailer. The one that was parked on my property. The one that mysteriously disappeared overnight. The one you have been trying to get rid of for months. I do not know anything about your trailer. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to get ready for work." She started to close the door, but I put my hand up to stop it. "Patricia, this is not a game. That generator powers the town's water pump. Without it, half the town has no water. That sounds like a town problem, not an HOA problem. And you still are not allowed to keep commercial equipment on your property. It is not commercial equipment. According to HOA bylaws, Section 12, Subsection 4, any vehicle or trailer used in the operation of a business or commercial enterprise is not permitted to be stored on residential property for longer than 72 hours. I use it for emergency services. You also use it for your welding business, which makes it commercial. Now please remove your hand from my door or I will call the police." I stepped back, trying to keep my temper under control. "The police are already on their way to my house. I reported the trailer stolen. So if you know where it is, now would be a good time to say so." Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, but then her expression hardened again. "I do not appreciate your accusations, Aaron. I have done nothing wrong. The HOA simply arranged for the removal of a vehicle that was in violation of our bylaws. You had it towed. I arranged for it to be relocated to a more appropriate storage facility. You will receive information about where you can retrieve it and pay the associated storage fees. During a power outage, you had it towed during a power outage when the entire town needs it. That is unfortunate timing, but it does not change the fact that you were in violation." I felt like my head was going to explode. Patricia, people need water. You understand that, right? Water. The thing humans need to survive. Then perhaps the town should invest in proper infrastructure instead of relying on private citizens who refuse to follow community rules. I turned and walked away before I said something I would regret. Behind me, I heard her door close firmly. By the time I got back to my house, Deputy Morrison was pulling into my driveway. He was a younger guy, maybe late 20s, who I had met a few times around town. He got out of his cruiser with a notepad. "Morning, Aaron. Sandy said your generator got towed." Patricia Hendricks just admitted to me that the HOA had it towed. She called it a relocation. He frowned. "Did she say where?" "No, said I would get information about how to retrieve it." "Okay, well, that changes things a bit. If she had it towed as part of an HOA enforcement action, that is different from it being stolen. I am going to need to look at your HOA documents and see what authority they actually have. Even during an emergency, that generator is part of the town's emergency water system." "I understand that. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, do you have any other way to get power to that pump?" "Not without that specific generator. It is the only one with enough output, and the connection is set up for that unit." Marcus called me back right then. I answered and put it on speaker so the deputy could hear. "Aaron, I have been calling around. The towing company is Riverside Towing out of Missoula. They confirmed they picked up a generator trailer from your address at approximately 1:30 this morning. It is currently at their impound lot." "Did they say who ordered the tow?" "A Patricia Hendricks on behalf of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA. They have it listed as an HOA violation removal." Deputy Morrison nodded and made notes. "Okay, that is helpful. Marcus, this is Deputy Morrison. What is the status of the water situation?" "We have had about 15 calls already from residents on the north side wondering why their water pressure is low or non-existent. The tank still has some reserve, but that will be gone by noon, maybe sooner if people are running taps trying to figure out what is wrong. We need that generator back and running within the next few hours." "Understood. I am going to contact Riverside Towing and see about getting it released immediately." "Aaron, do you have proof that this generator is part of the town's emergency infrastructure?" "I have my contract with the town, and Marcus can verify everything." "Good. Send me that documentation. I am also going to have a conversation with Miss Hendricks about the timing of this action." The deputy left, and I went inside to dig up my paperwork. My phone was down to 8%, so I plugged it into my truck to charge and started making calls. First, I called the mayor's office. Meadowbrook had a mayor, but it was basically a part-time position. Our current mayor was a woman named Donna Sheffield who also ran the local insurance agency. Her assistant said she was not in yet, so I left an urgent message. Then I called the town council president, a retired engineer named Harold Cummings. He actually answered. "Harold, it is Aaron Peterson. We have a serious problem." I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he let out a long sigh. "Patricia Hendricks is going to get sued by the town. You know that, right? I am more concerned about getting the generator back right now." "Understood. Let me call the town attorney. We may need to get an emergency court order." "How long until the water runs out completely?" Marcus said noon at the latest. "That gives us 5 hours. Okay, stay by your phone. I am going to make some calls." Over the next hour, my house became command central for what was rapidly turning into a town emergency. The power company called to say a tree had taken down a major line and repairs would not be complete until late afternoon at the earliest. Marcus called again to update me that water pressure was dropping faster than expected because people were panicking and filling bathtubs and storage containers. Deputy Morrison called to say that Riverside Towing refused to release the trailer without either authorization from the HOA or a court order, because they had a contract with the HOA and were concerned about liability. He was working on getting an emergency order from a judge, but it was Saturday morning and tracking down a judge was proving difficult. Mayor Sheffield finally called me back. "Aaron, I am at the office now with Harold and our attorney. We are drafting an emergency order. The problem is we need a judge to sign it, and Judge Peterson is apparently on a fishing trip in Wyoming. What about another judge? We are trying. The county seat is in Hamilton, and we are calling everyone we can. But it is Saturday morning, and this is rural Montana. So what do I do?" "Sit tight. We are also reaching out to Patricia directly. Maybe we can convince her to authorize the release. I talked to her this morning. She does not care. Well, maybe she will care when the town attorney explains potential legal liability to her." I hung up and sat in my truck, which was the only warm place since my house was getting colder by the minute. It was nearly 9 in the morning, and I was watching my phone battery percentage like it was a countdown timer. A text came through from a number I did not recognize. "This is Elizabeth Foster from the Meadowbrook Gazette. I heard about the situation with the water pump. Can I ask you some questions?" Great. The local newspaper had caught wind of this. I called her instead of texting back. She answered immediately. "Mr. Peterson, thank you for calling. I am trying to understand what happened. Is it true the HOA towed your generator during the power outage?" I explained everything, keeping to the facts. She asked good questions and did not seem to be looking for drama, just information. "This is going to be my front page story," she said. "The community needs to know what is happening. Do you have a copy of the HOA letter or any documentation showing they towed it?" "I do not have a letter yet. Patricia said I would be receiving information about retrieval." "Okay, I am going to reach out to her for comment. Thank you for talking with me." Around 10:30, my phone rang with a call from a number that showed up as Riverside Towing. "Is this Aaron Peterson?" "Yes. This is Greg Maloney, owner of Riverside Towing. I understand there is a situation with a generator we picked up from your property." "That is putting it mildly. Look, I am in a bad spot here. We have a contract with the Meadowbrook Heights HOA to handle their violation removals. We got a call last night from Patricia Hendricks saying there was a commercial trailer that needed immediate removal. We sent a driver. He picked it up. It is in our lot. Now I am getting calls from the sheriff's department and the mayor's office saying this is an emergency and we need to release it immediately. But Miss Hendricks is threatening to sue us if we release it without her authorization. That generator powers the town's water pump. Without it, thousands of people do not have water. I understand that now. Nobody mentioned that last night. Look, if I get something official from the town, I will release it immediately. But I cannot just hand over property that we were contracted to secure without some kind of legal backing." The deputy said he was working on a court order. "I have not received anything yet. As soon as I do, I will personally drive the thing back to your property. I am not trying to be difficult here. I just do not want to get caught in the middle of a legal mess." I understood his position, even though it frustrated me. He was just trying to run his business. By 11, the situation had escalated significantly. Marcus called to say they were now getting dozens of calls. The water tank was nearly empty. Some businesses had closed because they could not operate without water. The elementary school had canceled activities. People were starting to get angry, and social media was blowing up with people demanding answers. The Meadowbrook Gazette had published an online story with the headline "HOA tow during outage leaves town without water." Within minutes, it was being shared everywhere. My phone started getting calls from people I barely knew, some thanking me for trying to help, others asking what they could do. Then Patricia called me. "You have turned this into a circus," she said without preamble. "You called the newspaper," a reporter called me. I told her the truth. "You are making me look like the villain here. Patricia, you towed emergency equipment during an outage. What did you think was going to happen?" "I enforced a legitimate HOA rule. That is my job. Your job is not more important than people having water. This is not about water. This is about you thinking you can ignore the rules just because you have some contract with the town. The rules apply to everyone, Aaron. Then authorize the release of the generator and we can sort out the HOA issue later." "No. You are in violation, and the trailer will remain impounded until you agree to keep it at an off-site storage facility and pay the outstanding fines." "How much are the fines?" $1,500, plus the towing and storage fees. "For what?" 8 months of violations at $50 per month, plus late fees and administrative costs. I was gripping my phone so hard I thought it might break. "Patricia, let me be very clear. If you do not authorize the release of that generator immediately, the town is going to sue you personally for damages. Every business that loses money, every person who has to buy bottled water, every problem that happens because of this, they are going to come after you for it. Let them try. I am protected under the HOA's corporate structure. I do not think that is going to help you when people find out you left them without water over a $1,500 fine. I am not going to be bullied, Aaron. Not by you, not by the town, not by anyone." She hung up. I sat there, trying to figure out what to do next. Then my phone rang again. It was Harold from the town council. "Aaron, we found a judge. Judge Martinez from Ravalli County was willing to sign an emergency order. It is being sent to Riverside Towing right now. You should have your generator back within the hour." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, Harold. Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet. We still have to deal with the legal fallout from this. The town council is meeting in emergency session this afternoon. We are likely going to pursue legal action against the HOA and Patricia Hendricks personally. I will be there. Also, be prepared. Patricia is probably going to come after you hard after this. She does not strike me as someone who backs down. I know. I am ready." 45 minutes later, a flatbed truck pulled up to my house with my generator trailer. Greg Maloney himself was driving, and he helped me get it unloaded. "I am really sorry about all this," he said. "If I had known what it was for, I never would have touched it. Not your fault. You were just doing your job. Still, for what it is worth, I am canceling our contract with that HOA. I do not need that kind of aggravation." As soon as the trailer was positioned, I got the diesel generator fired up and connected the power line. The machine roared to life and I called Marcus. "Generator is running. How long until water pressure is back?" "The pump will need about 15 minutes to fully prime and get water moving. We should see pressure returning to normal within 30 minutes after that." "Good. I am going to keep it running until main power is restored." Over the next hour, I monitored the generator and fielded phone calls. The town council president called to confirm I would attend the emergency meeting at 3 that afternoon. The newspaper reporter called back with follow-up questions. Several neighbors came by to thank me and express disbelief at what Patricia had done. One of them, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Riley, was particularly upset. "I have lived in this neighborhood for 20 years, she said. "I remember when the HOA actually helped the community instead of terrorizing it. Patricia Hendricks has been on a power trip ever since she took over. Last year she tried to fine me because my Christmas lights were not the right color. Can you imagine? Not the right color. I believe it. She has been after me about this trailer for months. Well, she finally went too far. Half the town is calling for her resignation. There's even a petition going around online. I checked my phone and sure enough, someone had started a Change.org petition titled "Remove Patricia Hendricks from Meadowbrook Heights HOA." It already had over 300 signatures. The power came back on around 1:30 that afternoon. I let the generator run until I was sure the main power was stable, then shut it down and disconnected it. The machine had performed perfectly, as always. I made sure it was fully secured and locked before heading inside to finally warm up and grab some food. The emergency town council meeting was held at the community center. I expected maybe a dozen people to show up. Instead, there were at least 100 residents packed into the meeting room, with more standing in the hallway. The energy in the room was intense. Mayor Sheffield called the meeting to order and gave a brief recap of what had happened. Then she opened the floor for discussion. The first person to speak was Marcus Webb, who explained the technical details of the water system and confirmed that without the generator, the north side of town would have been without water for several more hours, potentially causing serious problems. Then Harold spoke about the legal issues. The town attorney has advised that the HOA's actions during a declared emergency, which this outage qualifies as based on duration and impact, may constitute reckless endangerment and potentially criminal negligence. We are exploring all legal options, including civil suits for damages and filing complaints with the county prosecutor. That got people's attention. There were murmurs throughout the room. A business owner named Tom Chen stood up. "My restaurant had to close for 4 hours today because we had no water. I lost over $1,000 in revenue and had to throw out food. Who is going to reimburse me for that?" "That is exactly the kind of damages we would be seeking in a civil suit," the town attorney replied. She was a sharp woman named Rebecca Ortiz who practiced in Missoula, but did contract work for Meadowbrook. Any business or individual who suffered quantifiable losses as a result of this action would potentially be able to claim damages. More people started speaking up. A mother talked about having to drive 20 miles to buy bottled water for her kids. A senior citizen mentioned having to go to a neighbor's house because he needed water for his medications. Someone else pointed out that the fire department had been hampered because hydrant pressure was low. Then someone stood up and said, "I think we need to hear from Patricia Hendricks. Is she here?" All heads turned. Patricia was indeed sitting in the back row, arms crossed, face set in a stubborn expression. Mayor Sheffield nodded. "Miss Hendricks, would you like to address the council?" Patricia stood up slowly. "I would like to make it clear that I did nothing illegal. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA has bylaws that are legally binding contracts. Every homeowner agrees to those bylaws when they purchase property in our subdivision. Aaron Peterson was in clear violation of those bylaws. I gave him multiple opportunities to comply. He refused. As president of the HOA, I have not just the right but the responsibility to enforce our rules. Even during an emergency," someone shouted. The timing was unfortunate, but it does not change the facts. Mr. Peterson could have avoided this entire situation by simply following the rules like everyone else. I stood up. "Patricia, I was following the rules. I was fulfilling a contract with the town to provide emergency services. That is not a commercial activity. You also use that generator for your welding business. That makes it commercial equipment. I use my truck for my business too. Are you going to tow that next?" There was some scattered laughter, but Patricia's expression did not change. "If you start parking commercial welding equipment in your driveway, yes, I will have that addressed too." Rebecca Ortiz, the town attorney, spoke up. Miss Hendricks, I want to make sure you understand the legal position you are in. Montana law provides certain protections for emergency services and infrastructure. There is a strong argument that your actions interfered with essential municipal services during an emergency. That could potentially carry criminal penalties in addition to civil liability. I did not interfere with anything. The town chose to rely on private equipment. That was their decision. A decision made through a legal contract. By removing that equipment without notice during an active emergency, you potentially violated several statutes. I am going to be very direct with you. The town is prepared to pursue this aggressively. You should consult with an attorney. Patricia's composure finally cracked a bit. Are you threatening me? I am advising you of the legal reality. You made a decision that left 3,000 people without water for several hours. That has consequences. The meeting continued for another hour with various residents speaking. A clear consensus emerged. People wanted accountability. Several HOA board members who were present tried to distance themselves from Patricia's decision, claiming they had not been consulted about the tow. One board member, a man named Robert Kim, actually stood up and said, I am formally calling for a vote of no confidence in Patricia Hendricks as HOA president. This situation never should have happened. That triggered a whole debate about HOA procedures and voting requirements. Patricia insisted that any such vote would need to follow proper protocols and could not happen at this meeting. Robert countered that he would be organizing a special HOA meeting as soon as possible. By the time the town council meeting ended, it was clear that Patricia's days as HOA president were numbered. But the legal situation was just beginning. The following Monday, the local news picked up the story. A reporter from the Missoula television station came out and interviewed me, Marcus, and several affected residents. They tried to interview Patricia, but she refused to comment. The story ran that evening on the 6 o'clock news, and suddenly, my little town's HOA drama was regional news. That same day, I received a certified letter from Patricia on behalf of the HOA. It informed me that I was being fined an additional $500 for causing reputational damage to the Meadowbrook Heights community, and that if I did not pay all outstanding fines within 30 days, they would place a lien on my property. I took the letter directly to Rebecca Ortiz. She read it and actually laughed. This is absurd. She is doubling down instead of backing off. This just makes the town's case stronger. Can she actually place a lien on my property? Technically, HOAs do have that power for unpaid dues and legitimate fines, but these are not legitimate fines. We will fight it. And honestly, at this point, I would be surprised if the HOA even exists in its current form in a few months. There is a lot of momentum for dissolving it or completely restructuring it. She was right about the momentum. The petition to remove Patricia had grown to over 1,000 signatures, which was remarkable considering the town only had about 3,000 residents total. Social media was full of people sharing their own stories about unreasonable HOA enforcement actions. It turned out Patricia had been aggressive with a lot of people, and this incident had opened the floodgates. A special HOA meeting was called for the following Saturday. I attended, along with what seemed like half the neighborhood. The meeting was held in the elementary school gym because the usual meeting space was far too small. Robert Kim chaired the meeting and got straight to business. We are here to vote on a motion of no confidence in Patricia Hendricks as HOA president, and to vote on potential dissolution or restructuring of the HOA board. Patricia tried to argue that the meeting was not properly noticed and that the votes were invalid, but Robert had done his homework. He had copies of the HOA bylaws and showed that everything had been done correctly. A lawyer who lived in the neighborhood, a woman named Jennifer Santos, confirmed that the procedures were proper. The vote was not even close. Out of 140 residents present, 128 voted for Patricia's removal. Only 8 voted against and 4 abstained. Patricia stood up, face red with anger and humiliation. "This is a witch hunt. You are all making a huge mistake. Without proper HOA enforcement, property values will plummet and this neighborhood will turn into a slum." "I think we will take our chances," someone called out. Patricia gathered her things and walked out. Several people actually clapped. The meeting continued with a vote on restructuring the HOA. The proposal that passed was to significantly scale back the HOA's authority, limiting it to only major issues like structural maintenance of common areas and preventing genuinely harmful activities. All the petty rules about mailbox colors and holiday decorations and parking were voted out. A new board was elected, with Robert Kim as president. One of his first acts was to formally rescind all of my fines and issue an apology on behalf of the HOA. But the legal situation was far from over. 2 weeks after the HOA meeting, the county prosecutor announced that criminal charges were being filed against Patricia Hendricks. Specifically, she was charged with reckless endangerment and interference with emergency services, both misdemeanors under Montana law. The prosecutor, a stern woman named Catherine Morrison, held a press conference explaining the decision. While HOAs have legitimate authority to enforce reasonable rules, that authority has limits. Ms. Hendricks' decision to remove essential emergency equipment during an active power outage, without any attempt to coordinate with town officials or arrange for alternative solutions, created a serious risk to public health and safety. Several elderly residents and individuals with medical conditions were put at risk. This crosses the line from civil dispute to criminal conduct. Patricia pleaded not guilty and hired a lawyer from Missoula to defend her. Her lawyer argued that she had no way of knowing the generator was critical infrastructure, and that she was simply enforcing legitimate HOA rules. The town also filed a civil suit seeking damages. Rebecca Ortiz compiled claims from the town itself for emergency response costs, from businesses for lost revenue, and from individuals for various expenses and hardships. The total came to over $50,000. The criminal case went to trial in late May. I was called to testify, as were Marcus Webb, several town officials, and multiple residents who had been affected by the water outage. The trial lasted 3 days. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that she was being scapegoated for doing her job, and that the real problem was the town's failure to invest in proper backup systems. But the prosecution brought in an expert witness, an engineer who specialized in municipal water systems, who testified that the town's setup was reasonable and appropriate for a community of Meadowbrook size and budget, and that Patricia's actions were reckless regardless of whether she knew about the water system. The key moment came when the prosecutor introduced text messages that Patricia had sent to another HOA board member on the night she ordered the tow. In those messages, she acknowledged that there was a power outage and that the timing might cause problems, but she said she did not care because Aaron needs to learn that rules have consequences. That text message was devastating. It showed that she knew there was an emergency situation and proceeded anyway, not out of ignorance but out of spite. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on both charges. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Sandra Yates, did not go easy on Patricia during sentencing. Miss Hendricks, you abused a position of trust and authority within your community. You placed your personal vendetta and your interpretation of minor HOA rules above the health and safety of thousands of people. This court finds that your actions were reckless, dangerous, and completely unacceptable. I am sentencing you to 6 months in county jail, suspended pending completion of 200 hours of community service, 2 years of probation, and a fine of $5,000. Additionally, you are prohibited from serving in any HOA leadership position during your probation period. Patricia looked stunned. I do not think she ever really believed she would be convicted, let alone face actual consequences. The civil case settled a month later. Patricia's homeowner's insurance initially tried to deny the claim, arguing that her actions were not covered, but eventually agreed to pay $30,000 to settle. Patricia personally had to pay the remaining $20,000 plus her legal fees. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she put her house up for sale shortly after the settlement. She moved away from Meadowbrook that summer. I never saw her again. As for the HOA, the restructured version functioned smoothly. Robert Kim proved to be a reasonable and effective president. The organization focused on actual community building, organizing neighborhood events, and maintaining the small park and playground that served the subdivision. Fines were rare and only issued for serious violations. The town council voted to give me a small bonus for my role in maintaining the emergency water system, and formally recognized my service at a council meeting. They also updated their emergency response plans to include better coordination and communication protocols, so that something like this could not happen again. My welding business continued to do well, and I kept my generator trailer exactly where it had always been, now with absolutely no complaints from anyone. In fact, several neighbors mentioned they felt better knowing it was there. On the 1-year anniversary of what everyone started calling the HOA incident, the Meadowbrook Gazette ran a retrospective article. Elizabeth Foster, the reporter who had first covered the story, interviewed me and several other people involved. Looking back, what do you think was the real issue here? She asked me. I thought about it for a moment. I think it was about someone who got a little bit of power and let it go to her head. Patricia probably started with good intentions, wanting to maintain the neighborhood, but somewhere along the way she forgot that rules are supposed to serve people, not the other way around. When enforcing a rule becomes more important than common sense and community welfare, something has gone seriously wrong. The article also noted that several other HOAs in the region had revised their bylaws in the wake of the incident, adding explicit language about emergency situations and requiring board consultation before any actions that might affect emergency services or public safety. I framed a copy of that article and hung it in my workshop, not because I was proud of the conflict, but because it reminded me of something important. Communities work best when people remember that they are neighbors first and rule enforcers a distant second. The generator trailer still sits on the side of my property. It has been called into service a dozen more times over the past year for various power outages. Each time, it does exactly what it is supposed to do. It keeps the water flowing. It keeps the community running. And it serves as a quiet reminder that sometimes the most important service you can provide is simply being prepared to help when help is needed. Life in Meadowbrook returned to normal, or as normal as life gets in a small Montana town. The story became local legend, the kind of tale people told newcomers to explain the town's character. We were the community that stood up to an unreasonable HOA and won. We were the place where common sense prevailed over petty bureaucracy. And me, I was just the guy with the generator, trying to do the right thing and grateful to live in a place where, when it really mattered, my neighbors had my back. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about community, about standing up for what is right even when it is difficult, and about the importance of looking out for each other. In the end, that is what small-town life is supposed to be about. Not perfect lawns and uniform mailboxes, but people taking care of people, especially when the power goes out and the chips are down. I never sought out conflict with the HOA. I just wanted to live my life, run my business, and help my community when needed. But when forced to choose between backing down and standing up for what made sense, I am glad I stood my ground. Not for my sake, but for everyone who depended on that water system, and for everyone who was tired of being bullied by someone who had forgotten what leadership really means. These days, when I fire up that generator, whether for a real outage or just for testing and maintenance, I feel a sense of purpose. It is not just a piece of equipment anymore. It is a symbol of resilience, of community cooperation, and of the idea that we are all in this together. And that, more than any HOA rule or property value or perfectly maintained lawn, is what really makes a neighborhood worth living in.